So first one, I want to just explore were the obstacles associated with remote work. Now, there are quite a couple, and the first one, what I've identified is business processes that are not adapted to be more agile and flexible. So we still sit with a lot of rigid and old processes in our businesses. There's a lot of resource constraints that impacts us working from home. We look at load shedding now, not everybody's necessarily equipped or has a generator. The cost of data in South Africa is quite high, so it has got a financial impact on employees' resources. Another major obstacle is that a lot of businesses are still trying to apply performance methodologies or measurements that work when people were in the office, and they're not adapting these systems to a work from home strategy. And the lastly, I think a big obstacle for me that I've seen and heard from other people is a lack of trust to employees. And I think a lot of trust has to go into remote working, and without that, remote working can't be successful. So that's some of the obstacles that I've identified. And Mohammed, I don't know if you want to add anything to that conversation.
I think there's a number of challenges that companies are starting to face right now when it comes to remote working. And I think specifically some of the obstacles that we're looking at is infrastructure. How do we keep our employees connected in a infrastructure type of environment that doesn't necessarily facilitate easy connectivity? So I think some of the challenges we find now is, for example, fiber is not as widespread, which is probably right now the cheapest form of data. A lot of companies are going to broadband or 3G connectivity, which tends to be a little bit more expensive, or far more expensive rather than normal connectivity.
And for me, it's now to look at, we have now identified some of these obstacles, and how do we change our reward strategies to adjust, to overcome these obstacles. And I think the things that I've thought about was that we need to look at working hours definitely as a construct, and what is considered core. We sometimes very traditional in that and say you still have to work your 8 to 5, and which is not always easy with kids and so forth. If both parents are working from home, it's not always that easy. So you want to create core hours that's much shorter, so that there's more flexibility up or down for the employee as they see fit. I also think that we need to start adjusting allowances that's more specific to working from home, adjusting your travel allowance to a house allowance that can cover more like data as well as home, anything from paper to printed to, anything that can help you increase your efficiency and productivity can really help. So maybe we should just adjust our allowances to accommodate the right things as employers. And then also remuneration strategies also includes things that are not necessarily not financial, so non-financial. And here I think companies has a great opportunity to give access to employees to systems that enhance learning, like a Udemy. The people are now sitting at home, not necessarily going around. So it's actually a great time for learning, enhancing your skills.
A key obstacle right now is how do we actually balance the fact that our workplace and our homes are not separated? Do we mentally switch off? Are we able to do that? And as much as organizations seem to be accommodating employees to work from home by introducing flexible hours, by giving allowances, there is still that social element that's always missing. The thing with allowances, though, is they do sometimes tend to get very expensive for organizations to give employees, although they can become a very important value proposition, something that differentiates employers. The problem is in a COVID-19 world where companies are very cost-focused. Some of the questions is, how do we actually introduce allowances in a cost-effective way? And then if we can't introduce allowances, what are the alternatives? How do we maximize our value proposition, again, to attract and retain talent?
how can organizations equip their employees to enhance their productivity? Because I think a big question for employers is the employees that aren't performing at the same level that they were before lockdown. So how do we help these employees? And I think that for me, it's important to have a mental check-in. And we have regular check-ins at work, and it works so well. But I think some people are really struggling. And this is part of the learning and development that can happen in this time. So training to ensure everyone is up to speed. I think we move so fast to get online and get to all these tools that everybody is not on the same page. I find lots of people still phoning me and asking me, how do I do this? Help me with this. How can I get this done? And things that I would have expected people to know, but they don't, because they didn't receive always training or assistance, or it was done so fast that everybody was expected to be on a certain level.
We've moved from a situation where we manage work as an output of time into something that is far more flexible. And I think that change creates uncertainty, because what's happening now is that you may not necessarily be in front of your computer 24 hours a day, or the normal 8 hours you've been working. You have moved into a 24-hour time span where you're working at specific intervals throughout the day. You don't have anyone looking over you. So very often your output is your own output. And there is always that sense of uncertainty that is other people on the other side valuing what I am doing? Am I doing work? Do they think I'm doing work? And that on the one end creates a sense of mental uncertainty.
A lot of questions around, what performance management system do we use now? And, do we use work tracking systems? And I'm not a big fan of those type of systems, because I think that one of the best ways is to give trust to your employees that you will be able to do. And the deliverable is the output that you give. Because I think, at the end of the day, otherwise employees will feel very micromanaged and policed, and I think it's very difficult, especially in a knowledge-based type of environment where you can work from home. Your deliverables is going to be easy to see. If you don't deliver your reports, if you don't deliver your results or your presentation, it's clear to see, because it's driven by that. And I think that if you work in a greater team where you work part of a project, people are going to know that if you're not performing or bringing your part, because they're going to be impacted as well. So I don't know, what's your view on tracking systems and performance management systems, and how would you view that?
So I think when it comes down to performance management systems, the most important paradigm change is that we are now measuring output. We no longer measuring input. The way to perhaps avoid micromanaging is organizations now need to try and understand is how do they actually tighten up on performance management systems. Very often, there's two things we look at in performance management. One is, were you able to deliver on the objective set? And the second thing is, how were you able to improve and overcome obstacles?
And there's also a responsibility of the employee to develop and to take the charge of their own development, because I think a lot of employees wait for the employer rather than seeking out their own opportunities and self-learn. I think a lot of people from certain generations do that, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity at this point for us to develop and actually enhance our offering to the employees by doing that, and being an employer that encourages growth. In this time, I think at this stage, there's a few financial things that we can do to overcome, but there's a lot of non-financial things that we can actually put in place to help employees through this time.